Hello and welcome back to Chapter 7, Managing Recipients of Change and Influencing Internal Stakeholders. I like this one because this chapter is about the people we're trying to change, right? We're not really trying to change an organization, right? We're trying to change the people in the organization. So this chapter takes a good look at that. So we'll view those on the receiving end of the change and think about their assumptions and approaches. We'll use the term psychological contract and talk about how that affects how the changees view this change. We'll talk about their reactions to change, and we'll talk about the change leaders. So you can see now we're in here on Chapter 7, and we'll look at the responses to change, psychological contract, and so forth, those things we just covered. So certainly the reactions from the recipients are going to vary, right? But often ambivalence will come first. Well, here comes something, I wonder what it's going to be, right? People withhold judgment, which is probably about as good as you're going to get, as opposed to, uh-oh, something new coming, I hate this, before they even find out what it is. So this resistance doesn't have to be inevitable, right? You just got to work, we got to listen, we got to talk to these people about, in order to build a grassroots support for this effort, right? We need to do this early and often, like they used to say about voting in Chicago, vote early, vote often. So we need to channel these people's feelings for change. They're going to have legitimate concerns. So we need to seek to understand them. Let them say those. We need to address those. Right? We got to use positively oriented people, talking about the positive as a positive influence on this. This is going to be fine. This is how it's going to work. Change is a good thing. We need to do this because things will be better because of this. Right? And we need to think about the pace of the change. Too slow and it loses support, it loses momentum. Too fast and you try to run over people and they will resist it. So there's no magic answer there, but you need to pay attention to not just the change, but the speed of the change. Mixed feelings will be common as they have this sense of change, right? And certainly this ambivalence, I'm not sure what I think about this, creates discomfort. I don't like to be unresolved, and it's going to create a little bit of internal stress in me. Right? So once these people start to resolve their ambivalence, they're going to sort of flop one way or the other side of the fence, and then it's going to get difficult to change them. So you need to get to them early, and you need to try to solve this stuff fairly quickly. Some common causes of negative reactions, right? We mentioned there's many negative reactions, so why? Right? So certainly we can see that the perceived cost outweigh the perceived benefits, so we got to make sure we make a good argument in that case. The flawed communications process, we haven't addressed concerns, we haven't told people everything they want to hear or they need to know, and so maybe they've filled in the voids with their own lack of knowledge, and of course usually the unknown is worse than the known. They worry about the changes, but ill-conceived, that it's not a very thought-out thing, so we got to have this appearance of expertise and professionalism and all that, so they know they're in good hands. Number 5, probably have negative experience to change. So if we've blown it before, it's going to make it more difficult to do a good job this time. That's for sure. Number 6, we got to look for who's advocating this change, and if people have had a negative experience, that's going to be an issue. And we just look down at number 8, right? This change process seems to lack procedural and distributive justice. So we've broken contract with these people. Basically, we're stepping on them and they have no recourse. And we need to be sure that that's not the perception they get. And 9 is just good old-fashioned fear. Their fear that this change will have them do things they're not very good at, and they'll be exposed for that, and things won't go so well for them at work. Right? We need to think about managers are also recipients of this change. They're not just the change agents, but they're the recipients of change. So things are going to change around them, and they're going to have to try to cope with this change and making the change happen and changing their own organization while they're still trying to get work done. The old adage is it's like trying to change a jet aircraft engine while the aircraft is in flight. Right? So it's difficult and stressful and fraught with failure. All right, so I said we were going to talk about psychological contract. A lot of people realize there's this thing, but they may not know what it was called. So psychological contract represents the implicit and explicit agreements we believe we have with our organization. So I expect when I come to work that my desk will be there, or I expect the office get vacuumed over the weekend, or I expect if I screw up I'm going to get in trouble, but only so much. I expect get told to fix it and maybe chew down in front of others, but maybe not screamed at, or whatever this agreement we have in our head with at work. So if suddenly I'm asked to do things that I haven't agreed to before, maybe all of a sudden I need to travel more, or quickly acquire some new skills, right? I feel like our psychological contract has been voided, not on my part, but on the other party's part, on the company's part. Therefore, I feel a little cheated, right? I feel like they were kind of pulling the rug out from under me here, and I'm not very happy with it. So as a change agent, you need to deal with those thoughts and how this whole psychological contract defines people's perception of how things are at work and how things happen. So when you make unilateral changes, when the organization makes changes without the person making changes, then you end up with these negative feelings, right? Which is understandable. And when there are these reactions to change, you wind up with this sort of before the change, this pre-change anxiety, this anticipatory anxiety. Then during the change, there's this shock, maybe a defensiveness, maybe a bargaining. Hey, if I do this, we can do this. Maybe even depression, followed by, at the end, after the change, some acknowledgement of what happened, some adaptation change, hopefully. So coworkers have a big influence on recipients. They sort of influence each other. So trusted coworkers will have a calming and a positive effect on others around them. So those are the people you need to get to, particularly the informal leaders, the people that their colleagues look to for what's going on here, how should I react, is this okay or not. You need to get to those people. My advice is just put them on the change team, right? Put them on the job of maybe not determine what the change is, but at least how to implement the change. Get their opinion, get their support, have them roll it out to their organization since they're already an informal leader, right? And things will go a lot smoother because these teams with these informal leaders on, right, will be a lot more trusted by the followers, so they'll have a lot more influential effect on the organization. And these feelings about these change leaders matter, right? Because people are very much affected by their perceptions of the leader. So if you can find a leader they trust and believe, right, then respect, they're much more liable to take what they say as the truth and much more liable to act accordingly. Right? We want to try to not outlaw, but minimize criticisms for this change. And the basic way to do that is answer the questions before they come up. Right? So we want to have a meaningful engagement with recipients of how these decisions affect them and have answers. That means we got to get to them early. We got to get to some people early, ask their opinion, so we can start dealing with reaction from the rank and file. We want to reward supervisors who foster two-way communication and good working relationships. So we want to give the managers reward for using the carrot and not the stick. We need to have timely, authentic communications, and we need to keep having them. We need to just keep repeating them over and over again, give people a chance to talk, ask questions, not a one and done kind of thing. Right? And we need to keep surprises to a minimum as we roll out and implement this change. We talked about using good spokesmen for the messages. We can acknowledge when mistakes happen, and they will, right? We're going to acknowledge mistakes and make amends. You're right, we should have seen that. That's on me. We're going to fix it. This is how we're going to fix it, and on we go. Right? We certainly want to use two-way communication, so it's not just one way. So the employees get a chance to have their say, give us their perspective, and maybe even have some answers we haven't thought of, maybe really good answers. So we need to, we get, once they start jumping on board, we need to use their knowledge to help us. So middle managers kind of get stuck in this. I mentioned right there, they have the link above and below, and they're seen as championing these strategic alternatives, but they're also part of the change, so they got a lot to do. They got a lot to battle with. It's really pretty stressful on the managers, and their role might get changed a lot in this change. So some things that change leaders need to think about is avoid coercion, right? Use the carrot, not the stick. Better to have somebody not change than to be seen as a menace to one and all, because everybody else will know it too, and they'll have the occasion to not trust you or fear you or whatever. I would just work around the person who's not not coming through and helping you. We need to work to align these systems and change to get them all pulling in the same direction. Reduce the intensity of the change by making the change the norm. So make it seem like more of a normal thing, and just dial it back a little bit so it doesn't seem as a threat to people and reduces people's stress, right? And then and work to increase your tolerance for change. Get used to change. Think about change. See it from the positive side, and so as more and more change hits the organization, you're not so emotionally distraught by them. Right, so again, it's all about the trust and authority of the change agent, right? This change agent creates confidence in the proposed path, and then they provide an environment for people to get down that path, right? Because every change is a risk, and many of them fail. So get out there and don't hide in your office. Talk to people. Talk to people over and over again. Listen to them. Ask them what they think. Ask them how they feel. Ask them for suggestions. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Right? And talk about your personal experiences with change and responses and how you went through this before and this is the way it was. It's okay to do that. So in this chapter, we really focused on the recipients of change, right? And we talked about the resistance isn't inevitable, but there could be some ambivalence, and it's best to get to those people before they decide. So they decide with you, not against you, because it's difficult to change them then. Right? But understand their reasons for change and get out there and talk and listen to them, right? Get sounding boards, get the informal leaders on your side, get them making decisions, and try to implement this whole thing. And that concludes chapter 7.